transform the systems that make up our cities in order to provide a better world, to really use social innovation as a way to transform the world.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome, everybody. Today in the house, we have Dr. Stephen Crawford. He is a business coach. He's a leadership trainer. He is a bestseller author and much more. He is my mentor, and I welcome him today. Thank you for being here.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Paula.
So please share with us a little bit of your background so our audience get to know you more.
Well, I think it's funny because it depends on how far back we're going to go. Because many moons ago, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, grew up, moved to Minneapolis to go to college. Really, I just wanted to get out of the house, but I ended up started to attending college because my mother told me if I was going to leave town, I had to go to school. So I ended up going to school. I majored in urban studies, and so really having a passion to really figure out how to dig in and transform the systems that make up our cities in order to provide a better world, to really use social innovation as a way to transform the world. And throughout all of my research, all of my degrees, I was really fixated on the study of what happens if we didn't just go into communities and fill the potholes, but we actually resource the community with the strength, with the leadership, and with the awareness to really develop out of that. Well, it was in that process that I really began to really be committed to the idea that if we could transform the individuals within the communities to really see themselves as entrepreneurs and really begin to develop their own resourcefulness, it would really, really have a larger impact than just another food line or another clothes line or something like that. And so ultimately what we ended up doing was when the nonprofit started to go through a panic, I started working with businesses, and whether it was urban or suburban, we started doing consulting. And what we did with that leadership approach, we really started seeing the businesses that we were working with at least grow really fast. And so since that time, I guess the last dozen years or so, we've just been investing ourselves and our lives. And now our team has grown to really begin to invest in people and their dreams and what they're trying to accomplish. And that's kind of my story and what we've got going on right now. So
Awesome. Now, please share with us, like, behind the scenes of a leadership, of a leader. What are the habits that truly make you a leader? Like, what are those habits that you have to have in order for you to show up to work and lead?
yeah, and it's the reason it's a really good question, because a lot of people, when they think about leadership, often think about good leadership, which rightly so. I mean, we should have good leaders. It should be servant leaders and different things like that. Um, but leadership is really agnostic. It's not good or bad. It is. There are terrible leaders that have risen up to power and led mass movements going in a direction that I would find immoral and just really terrible. And you think about people who have um, are always willing to put others themselves first, and they'll I think about a leader like Osama bin Laden, who was willing to sacrifice the lives of other men for his agenda, but not his own. And people like Hitler and different things like that. It's just like there are people that have demonstrated poor leadership as well as models of good leadership. So we have a Mandela, a Dr. King. I know that there's a lot of people that give the philanthropists a hard time, but people that have taken the vow or the pledge, like a Bill Gates or a Warren Buffett, to say, listen, when I die, I want all my money to resource kind of the support of the nations for healing medicine, for different things like that. And so there's a lot of people that use their leadership as a force for good, but leadership itself is really agnostic. So when we look at leadership and we sit back, we can actually learn just as much as we can from the good leaders as we can from the bad, as far as what makes an effective leader. Because effective leader is one who's actually able to persuade other people to follow them. And I am convinced that the number one element to that is a confidence or a belief in the ideas that a leader purports. So a leader's confidence in their ability to accomplish. And so for Hitler, he had this idea of um, supporting his uh, ethnicity and his group to the detriment of others. And he felt like, he believed with certainty that if he got rid of the Jews and anybody that didn't look like him or feel like him, they would have a better country. And he used that certainty to persuade millions, which is crazy when you think about it. Especially, I've got a lot of good German friends, and it's just like, I'm like, really? This was just 80, 90 years ago. And they bought into that. And at the same time, Mother Teresa persuaded millions of people to pour out, to give, to go to the poor of Calcutta and to serve in ways, and to build schools and hospitals and clinics. And she used her influence because of her certainty. She was absolutely convinced that we could live in a better world, and we could make this a better world if there was a little bit more fairness and justice in the world. We would give of our resources in order to support the poorest of the poor in the world. So I think that the question is, what is the defining of a leader? Well, what habits lead into them developing certainty? Well, they've got to put themselves and expose themselves to the ideals that they purport on a pretty consistent basis in order to really, really buy in to their own ideas. So if you don't buy in your own ideas, you can't expect people to follow you. So that's a long answer to a very short question.
No, that's great. It is. I mean, it's like, if you have, it makes sense. If you have the certainty, that this is our mission, and you have to have, the love and the inspiration to make sure others believe on your mission or on your vision. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that is essential.
Yeah.
I'm very curious about the Great Resignation,
Mm-hmm.
that happened back in September. So do you think, what are your thoughts? Do you think it was a lack of leadership? Do you think it's a lack of mindset, of growth mindset, or the environment, the pandemic?
Yeah, I think anytime you have world events that push us to the brink of what we know as normal, uh, it invites the opportunity for people to ask questions. Um, and for a lot of people, they begin to ask the question, what do I really want? And is it necessary to do what I've always done to get what I always was after? Because for many people, and let's just be honest, in the United States, this wasn't true globally, but in many cases in the United States, um, the federal government pretty much wrote a check to subsidize a lot of the ills and a lot of the challenges in the industries that were hit most hard. Uh, and so we don't have a shortage of labor problem. We have a shortage of willingness to be labor. And so I think from people aren't willing to just work for anybody anymore. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be bigger than that. And so I think at the heart of that is leadership. We took for granted the fact that we would always have people. If we paid enough money, we could always get enough labor to do the work. And now what we've found is, no, that's not true, because for some of us, we have they've gotten to the point where it's like, no, I want more than that. And if the organization or the business or the leader had not done a good enough job at the beginning for selling the purpose and the reason and the connectivity, that their role, meaning the team member's role, was in a critical part of fulfilling the mission they have for their own life, then that organization ran the risk of losing those team members. And there were good team members of good organizations that just decided that, you know what, I want to work a job that doesn't require me to travel every day. And they found opportunities to do that. So I think anytime you have a challenge, it invites questions. And it doesn't mean that everybody who lost people were poor leaders, by no means. We lost individuals from our team that just decided that living in another part of the country was what they preferred. It was better. And
Yeah.
I can't blame them, because I've been looking at properties out of state as
Outside.
well. It's just been a very cold winter, a very
Yes.
long winter. So I get that. So for different people, for different reasons, but I think the questions emerges, and the leaders that had the best answers were able to solve the problems much more speedily. The leaders that didn't have good answers, unfortunately, many of them are still looking um, to raise the rates that they pay people in order to make the wages they pay people in order to make sure that they can have enough people in order to survive as an organization or as a company. So,
And there was money, like that's what you're mentioning is like that you can only give them so many bonuses, for them to like get hooked and be inspired by the vision and mission that we were talking about earlier. So great. Uh,
absolutely.
I believe that to be an outstanding leader, you have to have that consistency of learning and growing and how can I do it better? Like how can I improve my team? And I've learned from you. You're one of my mentors, and I know you learn from your mentors as
Mhm.
well. So, what is some of your favorite takeaways from Joseph McClendon III, from John Maxwell, that you can say, okay, this is what I've learned from my mentors?
Well, I think I think we all should have multiple mentors in our lives, because for each one we learn something different, and there's something unique about that mentor. Why we chose that mentor to say, I want to learn from them because of this. And so I could go down a long list of things that I learned, but I know that from someone like John Maxwell, who, number one non-entertainment paid speaker in the world, just phenomenal at communication. And to be quite honest, I've heard many of his stories because I've been following him for over 2 decades. I've heard many of his stories many times. And yet, every time he tells it, there's some originality to it. There's a little bit of his personality that you get to see. And so I've learned the effectiveness of communicating and really staying true to your message over a long period of time, over a sustained period of time, is what makes an effective leader. And I know that his message, although the platforms have changed, his message has been consistent over the 20 plus years that I've been able to read his books and follow him, and then receive mentorship from him. Those have been the same. From somebody like Joseph McClendon III, I mean, it's just like how to take the best of what you learn. And obviously, he's a neuropsychologist, and I'm a nerd, and I geek out with the brain, right? A lot of my research and everything has come with understanding how humans work. And so his curiosity is what I draw from him to really be able to really tap into some of those elements of how to take the best of and to empower people in order to go to the next level. From a Paul Martinelli, who basically the opposite scale of a neuropsychologist, right? You had a doctorate in neuropsychology, and you have someone who dropped out of high school. But his tenacity and desire and drive as he learned and grew, that teaches that anything is possible. And so I think there are different messages, both meta messages, and we can go down a list of micro messages. They are just, there's something you learn every time you see someone, hear someone, you're associated with someone. There's something that you grab in. But I think it's intentional. I don't think it is the, and I love all my mentors and everything I've learned from them, but I don't necessarily think it's always the wisdom of the mentor as much as just the preparedness of the student, that really is going to make the difference in the learning, because no mentor is going to walk with you after you've done the learning and ensure that you act on what you learn. And so the distinction, lots of people get mentored by people. The only ones that make a difference are the people that take what they learn and actually put it into action and put it into motion. And so I think that at different seasons and phases of my life, wherever I've been ready to receive that thing, taking notes on that thing, and I put those things into motion. And some things I heard, but I didn't really hear because I wasn't ready to put those things into motion and into action at that time. So I think that's just part of a great deal of the learning is really, really absorbing what you're there to learn. Always have your pen and paper out, always ready to take notes, always ready to take those things down. And you'll hear what you need to hear, because when the student appears, when the teacher appears, when the student appears, the teacher will teach. So
That is, yeah, I agree with you, because sometimes we hear the same story for the 10th time, and then you get something new out of it. Like, oh, it's like that just one word, or like one thought of it, and like, oh,
mhm.
I've heard this multiple times. So yeah, I agree with you. But it depends at what time of your season you're at that you're receiving that message. So good.
Absolutely.
How do you approach a come to Jesus meeting with your team? Like whenever there is, you have to talk seriously. How do
Hmm.
you approach that as, with your leadership skills?
Yeah. Well, first, I think it's important that every leader has regular check-ins with their team. I think one of the most difficult things is if you don't have regular check-ins, if you're not having regular reviews with your team, it makes tough conversations even tougher. So, um, on our schedule, what we love to have is a quarterly meeting. So every 90 days, we are one-on-one meeting with our team members, and it's typically those things. I think, as John Maxwell says, shovel the pile while it's small. Um, it's in those moments that you can. The 90 days is not a severe or long time, especially when the world moves as fast as it does. So if you deal with the problem at that level, when it's that small, you really don't tend to get into the big moments, where you have to confront. And so I find like many leaders, um, they have to have these big conversations because they honestly they weren't having the conversations as they were going along because there was no accountability through the process. And so if you don't deal with the uncomfortable moment of accountability in the moment, you'll deal with it severely, due to the lack of accountability and the problems that creates down the line. So I would say, first of all, just really having regular check-ins and a platform in which you can discuss what's going well, what's not going well, in order to reduce the level of stress that comes with some of those conversations. But inevitably, there'll be things that emerge in the moment and within that process that you're not ready for, and you do have to have those conversations. I have to be very carefully because for those who study personality type, um, from the DISC personality type, I happen to be a DI, which means I can be very task oriented first. And my friendly side is very quickly behind that, but my task orientation wants to solve the problem. And so I have to really, really get a hold of myself sometimes, because sometimes I'll act before I even realize the impact it has on people. I'll say things. I was explaining to a client just a couple of hours ago. Um, my team looks for ways to have meetings without me, um, and it's beautiful. Not really. It's not something that excites me, but I'm a pattern person, so I figured out the pattern. I said, okay, they keep scheduling meetings when I'm not there, and they wait till they finish something before they bring it to me. And the reason they do that is because a lot of times, because of the way I'm wired, I'll open things all the way back up when they're trying to get things executed and done. And I'm taking us back to brainstorm phase. So they don't like to start all over again. So they
Okay.
want to get it as close to done as possible before they bring it to me, and they just want my seal of approval. They really don't want my opinion half the time, but that's okay. Um, But what often happens is, not often, but what will happen sometimes is that I'll see the finished product and I'm not happy with it. And they've been working hard, in some cases for weeks, on this thing. And but they didn't get my input. And so I can just say, well, they didn't ask me to get my input earlier, so I'm just going to smash it and say start over. Or I can try to practice something that I'm not wired to do, which is patience. Look for the discipline of disciplining my disappointment, and then start to rearrange the conversation so I can start asking questions that will help them see why I've come to the conclusion that I've already come to. And that, John Maxwell's book, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. I mean, we have to learn, and I think Michael Marquette wrote another book called Leading with Questions. I think which is actually much more practical, much more applicable to this, figuring out how to ask questions in a way that doesn't demoralize, it doesn't get people to shrink, but it really does give people the opportunity to jump in. So that's probably what I aspire my approach to be. Sometimes I'm probably a little quicker to jump in there and try to challenge them. But we all have areas of growth, and patience is not. They often say patience is a virtue. I say, yeah, but not one of mine. So I
Now that you
somebody else.
mentioned, now that you mentioned that, I've been trying to train myself not to ask the question, well, why? Because they said that you automatically, wake up a defense mechanism from them if you
Yes,
ask the question why. So it's like never ask the question why. We can ask how, when, but never ask the question why, so you don't wake up that defense mechanism for them to feel like you're attacking them.
that's 100% correct. So you don't
So
want to come off as a judge.
yeah, so I'm with you right there. I need to read the book and learn to ask, even as a parent, as a mom, I have to learn to ask better questions so I can lead my children to the right direction.
Yep.
So I'm glad you brought that up. Yay. Uh, how can you inspire a team for high performance?
Uh, Everybody likes to win. Bottom line, I don't care who you are. Everybody likes to win. Even people that don't like competition like to be associated with winning. And one of the biggest challenges with teams, the reason they can't perform high, because they don't know what high performing is. And I know that sounds really, really strange. The scoreboards are unclear. When you look at a professional sports team, they measure everything from the speed to and I'll use baseball as an example. How many fastballs they hit, how many curves they hit, how many sliders they hit. They're measuring every little statistic, and they're measuring it because they believe that if all those statistics are going in the right direction, it builds enough consistency to generate a win. I think there was a movie called Moneyball, in which the guy wasn't looking for home run hitters. He was looking for people to get singles, because he realized that winning, and they went on almost the longest winning streak in baseball history, with the Oakland A's. And it was because he built a team to get victories, not necessarily to hit home runs. And most people are just so busy looking for that one home run. Well, you get one home run, great, but you can still lose. What if you look for every metric? And so he broke down the game into these micro metrics that now every single team in Major League Baseball does. But it's true in basketball. They're looking at, everything: speed, agility. In American football, it's yards per run. It's every little thing. They're measuring how many seconds in the pocket. They look at all these little details. And what most high performing teams don't do, they just look at the scoreboard at the end and they think, did we win or lose? Well, that's demoralizing. You can't learn anything from that. A high performing team has several different metrics and several different KRAs or KPIs or whatever you want to call them, to make sure that they're winning in every category. Because if we know win in every category, they can't beat us. And I love John Wooden, who's arguably the greatest coach of all time. And obviously most people know, if they read John Maxwell, that for the last 5-7 years of his life, he mentored John Maxwell, and there's been no other coach like him. And basically, he taught people how winning the micro game ultimately is really winning the ultimate game, is doing your best, your optimum best at every level that you can, and then the results fall where they fall. And so I think that's the winning combination for high performing teams. It's really being absolutely committed to winning at every level, and then the victory just flows from there.
Yeah, learning to measure, right? Because we cannot manage what we cannot measure. So that is probably same thing with our personal life. Like if we don't stand on the scale every once in a while, then we will never measure our weight or pay attention to, how tight those jeans are. So yeah, I agree with you. Yes, we have to measure in order for us to manage our success.
Yeah.
Yay.
So there's a lot of degrees to high performing teams, but knowing the scoreboard knowing what winning looks like is kind of that first step. And then, working together, there's teamwork, there's all things like open, fast, agile leadership with good dialogue and other things. But I think knowing the score, what does winning look like today? If we're clear on that, that'll take us a long way.
Oh, yes. Now, where can we find you? Because you own your own company. If there's anybody here in our audience that wants to know more about you, wants to maybe read your book, where can they find you?
Yeah, our website is experienceleadership.com. We're in the process of a makeover, but that's okay. It's still up, experienceleadership.com, as we're getting ready, as we're rebuilding, in the process of rebuilding our site. The book, if people want to find that, is Too Stupid to Fail, TOO, Too Stupid to Fail. Not necessarily on our website right now, but that's because it's in revision right now. So, but yes, no, I pretty easy to find. And if there's any way we can add value, I would say that we invite that. If you contact us, what I like to do, especially if people are business owners, is we have a free assessment that we have people fill out to be able to assess. And in 12 minutes, they can fill out an assessment to find out where their business is in the different areas of business. And so as a free resource, I would invite you to contact us and ask for our business assessment tool. And we'd be more than happy to see if that can add value to any type of business leader. So
Awesome. Okay, you added tons of value already. But one more last question. What would be, like an advice you could give us for all of us to begin to create a brighter future? Like, what do you think are like the essential elements as for like right now?
Yeah. Well, life can be an exciting adventure, or it can be boring. And the power is in our choice. And I think that we have to be compassionate and get involved in our own stories. If you realize that you're living a story, and there's 4 characters within stories, there's the victim, who can never help themselves because everything is someone else's fault. There's the villain, who criticizes and just complains about the way the world is. There's a hero who jumps in and tries to save the day. And then there's the guide, who offers counsel and wisdom for the hero. And I would say that on a daily basis, you should probably try to detect which character you're playing today. Are you find yourself complaining, making excuses? Do you find yourself jumping into battle? Are you being supporting and serving one another? I think if we really begin to really analyze our own story and realize that we are not victims of anybody's story. Fate is a terrible writer. Relying on fate or the universe to figure out life for you, it is a terrible way to go about living. I truly believe that when the greatest moment for individuals when they wake up and realize that, if you want to be the author of your own story, you've been given a pen. And boy, this can be an amazing ride if you learn how to write it and write it well. So, and in the meantime, reach out to Paula, because she can actually help guide you and direct you as well as a mentor to be able to rewrite your own story.
Thank you.
You've reinvented yourself, and so it's great. It's fantastic and fascinating to watch you bloom and grow as you serve others, and it's just a fantastic to just participate with you in this.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, whoever is listening to us today. I hope you found value in this interview. I hope you find a word, a phrase, an aha moment that you can implement into your life to create a brighter future. Blessings to you all. Thank you. High five.